Exam 1's going to be on Thursday, March 3rd. That's the last day of class before spring break. And it's going to cover 1-1, 1-2, 1-4. That's all material that we already have covered. And then what we haven't covered yet, 1-6 through 1-8. Okay. There's an exam to pass back, but I'll wait to the end to do that. Last class we had to jump around a little bit because there was some leftover material from one section, and then we had to finish covering one section and start another section. So here are the notes. They're up now, and the video's up too. Took a little extra long this time to get the processing put up to YouTube. I got it to work. So these notes start out with some homework problems. Someone asked a homework problem about 2.4, number 5. Then I had to finish circles from section 1.1. And then we jumped and finished off section 1.2, reviewing lines, and then we covered section 1.4, functions, and different ways of looking at functions, and finding the domain of a function is where we ended at. So we didn't quite finish that section yet. We almost did, but there's not much more left. And then we'll pick up from there with section 1.6 and 1.7 today. But first, I put up some weather stuff. Did I? I meant to. Okay, good. So that'll be for Sunday, the 28th, web assign, covering the material that we have already covered in class. So sections 1.1, 1.2, 1.4, sections we've already covered. And so anyone try any of those and have any questions? Let's do Sunday at midnight. Wait, I have to change the date though. Oh no, 27th is Sunday. Okay, yeah. So 28th at 5 a.m. is 27th at midnight. So yeah. So that's Sunday. So you still have Thursday to ask questions. Make sure you look at these before Thursday and come in with lots of questions. If there are none, then we'll just move on. 21. 37. I don't know. That number isn't right because there's 2 or 3 that haven't even added this yet. Boy, I don't know. Half attendance. We'll come with something else besides adding points to the test. That's not what it says in that thing. Take it right off. Wow. Alright, so let's go ahead and pick up where we left off then if there aren't any questions. I'll pass on the test at the end of the class. You can go with it. Go over the test too? Sure, yeah. We talked about what the definition of a function is. We talked about when you have a function, when you don't, and function notation. Finding the domain of a function is where we left off at. I think that might be a good place to pick up. And that's it actually for that section. There's nothing much after that except some application questions. Let's pick up with finding the domain of a function question. remember what we said about finding the domain of a function. I did have it up though. I don't know. I got issues. Well, yeah. Okay, so find the domain of a function. If there's a fraction, you can't divide by 0. And if there's a square root, it must be greater than or equal to 0. And so, those could happen at the same time, or neither of them could happen. If you look at these questions, this set of questions here, in 53 and 54, none of that happens. But then in all the rest, we have something happening. I guess, yeah. So in 53 and 54, these are just polynomials. There's no fractions. You don't have to worry about division by 0. And there's no square roots. And so there's nothing to rule out of the domain. So the answer to these would be basically all real numbers. There's a symbol for that, or if you want to say minus infinity to infinity, that works too. The symbol for all real numbers is an R with two bars on the first part of it. Okay, but as soon as you bring in fractions, you have to avoid division by 0. So, for example, in 62, you can't have that denominator equal to 0. So you find out what makes the denominator equal to 0, and you throw it out. This is a quadratic, but no constant term. So you factor out the x that they have in common, and then you use the 0 property to say either x is 0 or x is 2. And then you say all real numbers except these. That's what the domain is. If you have a square root, or I guess technically a fourth root too. If you have a square root, what you do is you force what's under the square root to be positive. You set up an inequality that says whatever is under the square root has to be greater than or equal to 0. And then you solve for x. Just like you would solve an equation. Just be careful if you ever have to divide or multiply by a negative, you need to flip the direction of